Okay. So last class what we have studied is we have talked about binomial nomenclature, or specifically we have talked about nomenclature, and what we remember is giving a name to an organism is called as nomenclature. No? Talking about nomenclature, there has been various methods, and the most commonly accepted is obviously binomial nomenclature. Who is the person behind binomial nomenclature? Obviously we talk about Carolus Linnaeus, but we know he is not the one who has proposed it or founded it, right? Caspar Bohin asile, right? But the person behind this and who maximum credit goes to obviously Carolus Linnaeus, right? So binomial nomenclature, whenever you have to give two names to a organism, generally that name would be considered as scientific, and as far as giving the name is concerned, you need to follow certain rules and regulations. We have talked about the rules and regulations. One point that was very important was the publication date. I think you remember Duta publication date you all have studied. What was that? 1753 and 1758. The name of the book? 1753 Species, Plantarum, or Systema Naturae, right? So which one was first? Obviously the naming of the plants began first, right? So hekin loke korisu. We will be continuing now. So sir, heading koriba. Sorry. Yeah. And together with that, we have another term that is called as a synonym. Synonym is something that we have done in the last class, right? The first given name is considered as a valid scientific name, and rest of the names that are given according to the binomial nomenclature or rules of binomial nomenclature, those are considered as synonyms, right? Now we have a term called as binomial epithet. Binomial epithet, if you read the sentence, keta words are tinta, but in spite of that, it is not considered as a trinomial nomenclature or trinomial name, right? This is because in case of trinomial nomenclature, we know what is the third part. Third part ki asile subspecies or varieties. Yate ki the third part ki hoy? Author's name, right? So that's the way you identify. Next, we have something called as a compound specific name. How will you identify a compound specific name? Whenever you see a hyphen between the species, right? Yate, the example that I have given is the part, this is the species part obviously, right? And this is the genus part. Species part could be of 2 words, it could be of 3 words also. Kintu tat ki thakibo, very important hyphen eta thakibo libo, right? And then this is another important point, tautonym. If the generic name and the specific name are same, yate question ki hai, it is not recognized by, yate ki likhiso, only recognized by zoologists, so not recognized by botanist, right? In naming of a plant, we don't have anything called as a tautonym. So yate likhiu lobo para. Eight point over question nahi se. Tautonym is valid for plants and animals. It's only valid for animals, right? Next, autonym, when species and subspecies, not very important. Homonym also not very important. Question has been asked about this one and 3, 1, 2 and 3, and the word synonym. Right? So up till here we have completed what is living, right? Next we have talked about diversity, right? We have talked about certain words called as classification, systematics and taxonomy. Next, we have to talk about taxonomic hierarchy. Before going to taxonomic hierarchy or taxonomic categories, দুটামান question just to have an idea যে কেনেকুৱা question আহিছে আগতে questions কৰিছোঁ নেকি নাই কৰা না we have not done na in the first class okay since we have covered a little bit of the portion so let's see what is the type of question that has been asked. Okay. Questions like I don't think you have to write it down. Just see whether you have understood or not. Likha hol sobore. Okay, the first question. Reproduction is synonymous with growth for which group of organisms? Unicellular organisms. Parisu so I mean likho ha. First class or did I write anything about reproduction, asexual reproduction likhaisilu niki likhaisu no okay so asexual reproduction or pura question ahise je you have to match the following type if you are talking about buds then we know we are talking about hydra right or yeast or okay fragmentation car asile filamentous forms or regeneration car asile planaria so like that is the second question. Next question ahise okay taxonomically known number of species is 1.7 million. Okay, which one of the following does not form the basis of modern taxonomic studies? Taxonomy we have talked about two types no classical or modern. Number one, structure of cell and morphology. Structure of cell and morphology hetu consider kore ne nokore obviously kore right. Next developmental process tamane physiology that etu consider kore. Next genetic basis nokore genetic study nokore no and fourth is ecological informations so yate morphology kore physiology kore ecology kore kintu genetics nokore right. Next the term systematics was derived from the word systema it is a dash word Latin word very good. Okay, publication of Linnaeus with the classification of 5900 plants is Plantarum, the name of the book, right? Okay, a question has been asked about the correct binomial epithet of garden pea. Garden pea, Pisum sativum, no? Ketaman scientific names anibo laibo. So Pisum sativum tu likhiba keneka. Obviously it belongs to binomial nomenclature. It will have two parts itself. But the proper way of writing it, since this is not handwritten, it is printed hoy no. The question would always be in a printed form. So printed form hole, what does the rule say? That it has to be in italics, right? So saita option dibo. Ketaman straight ase Roman letters or kisuman italics or ase. Kisumaনৰ 18 নামটো পিছত আছে কিছুমানৰ 18 নামটো আগত আছে we know the sequence how to write it right okay আৰু এটা question আহিছে which of the following scientific name represents both trinomial nomenclature and a autonym Taman just to have an idea say ekhini pora question ahise autonym or pora just question pudise so which of the following scientific name recognizes both trinomial nomenclature and autonym jikunu eta trinomial nomenclature third part to ki asile for animals it was subspecies aru autonym ki kose je species or subspecies obo lage right so the answer one of the option would be something like this right Yate eta option ase Brassica oleracea botrytis hetu nohoy the third part is not similar next ase Corvus splendens hetu this example the Indian crow so the answer would be that one right? So these were the types of questions that they asked. The process of naming a living organism nomenclature Taxonomic studies of various organisms are useful in Agriculture, industry, forestry, now all of these. Taxonomic studies code useful hoy. All of these, right? Identification of an organism means we have talked about the elements of taxonomy and the elements of systematics. No, that the first key is like identification, characterization, nomenclature, right, and classification. So yate khudi is identification of an organism means option A, its correct description. Option B, its correct classification. Option C, correct nomenclature. D, all of these. First one. It's only the correct description. And I come across a question to go back likhilwa. Jo tumalake elements of taxonomy likhisa, tat jodi jagah ase likha, or else you can just write anywhere where you have a space. Likha, identification of an organism means identification of an organism means gute kita option likhibo na lage, direct answer to likhi dim. Identification of an organism means its correct description. I think it's understood, na? Arveta question I say, unicellular organisms grow by. Unicellular organisms grows by cell division, right? Huh? Grows by, yeah, you can say if the option is there, then you can say it. But the proper option to generally cell division is thakibo, right? Reproduction will also be correct. So let's go to the next part. Heading poriba taxonomic categories. Note to likho and accordingly we'll understand. So when we are going to classify the organisms, as we have already discussed, now what we do is we write all the informations about the organism and then we try to give a proper classification, proper scientific way, right? Especially we have heard about words called as species, genus, family, order, etc. So arranging all the informations and putting the organism into such a type of groups is called as taxonomic hierarchy. We will be using a word called as hierarchy here. Taxonomy, as the name suggests, we have already studied. Right, is nothing but a type of classification itself where you consider certain points for classifying the organism. Hierarchy mane je ascending order to be keneke bostu bilak arrange koriba, right? So whenever we talk about hierarchy, the topmost position is obviously occupied by something called as a kingdom, and the lowest is occupied by the group called as a species. So that is the sequence that you have to know. So before going in details, at a line more rakile it will become easier. right? So all the information about the organisms and the organism would be placed under certain groups, and these groups are called as categories. These are called as rank, unit of classification, taxon, etc. etc. Bahut kita naam se will be writing the note, right? As far as these are concerned, keta as also hatta, right? So question kene kya hai, the sequence to kenuga. As far as remembering the sequence is concerned, we will never have a problem between genus and species. সদায় জানো যে স্পিচিজ তলত তাৰ ওপৰত জেনাছ থাকিব বা জেনাছ স্পিচিজ টুগেডাৰ will not have a problem with kingdom and phylum also. And topmost position is occupied by kingdom is something that we know. The problem lies in these three words: class উপৰত নে order উপৰত, family উপৰত নে order উপৰত, right? So if you remember that statement, any type of such a question would be easily answered, right? So sequence to ami gobe pai jam. So class, many orders belongs to a particular class, right? So many class together belongs to a phylum, many phylum together belongs to a kingdom, right? So sequence to janibole etu sentence monot rakhiba. Next we'll write the note. Okay, up till this portion, I think the sentences are clear now. Understood, na? So we are talking about taxonomic categories. Arranging these categories in a proper fashion is called as taxonomic hierarchy. How many categories now at this moment, or in modern system of classification, how many categories generally you see? We'll be using a word called as obligate, another word called as intermediate, right? So intermediate mane ki dutar majot thaka bostutok ami ki boli kau intermediate, and junkita ami specifically dekhiso, these are called as obligate characters. So the question will be asked, how many obligate characters and how many intermediate characters? Ami pisot korim, but as of now we know that there are 7 obligate characters, and this is what we use nowadays, right? But before it was he who has introduced the system. Our তেওঁ যেটা introduce করেছিলে, how many categories did the hierarchy contain? It contained or it consisted of just 5 categories. So কোনগিটা 5টা আর later কি add on হল, right? That is something. And apart from this word, এইটা word লাগিব no? Category is equal to rank, rank is equal to unit of classification. It is also called as a taxon. Question I have, what is a taxon? A taxon is nothing but a unit of classification. Is the point clear? Next point likha, later so in this point, what is the important point that we have to talk about is these 2 words, right? So when we are talking about hierarchy, keep pots clean, right? Generally we talk about phylum, but what is the synonym? We have a word called as division. Division kar karne use karo, phylum kar karne use karo. Division for plants and phylum for animals. So in a taxonomical hierarchical system, by in taxonomical hierarchy, how many obligate categories are there? There are 7 obligate categories, right? You don't have to by heart this line, A2 important, A2 important, right? And if you're talking about intermediate, we understand the meaning of intermediate. Or intermediate, how will you recognize? You have the words called as sub or super. Suppose you are talking about a family, you might have subfamily, you might have superfamily also, right? If it is subfamily, obviously it will belong in between family and genus, or super hole uporot, right? So in that case, not only with family it is associated, it could be associated with order also, suborder, superorder, right? Think in a class, subclass, superclass. So ebilakok ami ki boli ko intermediate categories keita ase 21 ta, right? Ekini hol. Next point. Now this point is something that's very important. It is what a question I had direct. So as we go higher up the taxonomical hierarchy or higher up the category, 2 points to be remembered is, once we go higher up, the number of organisms will keep on increasing. Eta species or demand organisms are say no. If you are comparing between genus and species, so obviously genus will have more organisms. What is the reason behind? Ami species etyalke porha nai, but even then we understand species is nothing but a group, right? Group comprising of key, group comprising of a specific organism, right? And these organisms should have certain characteristics, then only it can belong to a species, right? Species kobo lagile kiba to characteristics thakibo laibo, and the most important characteristic is they should be able to interbreed amongst themselves, right? Tahator majot reproduction koribo paribo laibo. Jedi koribo pare tetiahole they are included in a species, right? Similarly, higher to species is a group called as genus. So many species together. It is not like this that in a particular habitat you see just one species. There might be so many species, right? So you have an area you have a species A. Species boli kole, is it a single individual or we are talking about a group of individuals? With this respect, we are talking about a group of individuals, right? And what is the specific characteristic? They can interbreed amongst themselves. They are genetically similar, they are morphologically similar, with slight differences, that is different. As far as chromosome number and all those stuffs are concerned, everything is the same. Like the Homo sapiens boli kole, it hardly matters where we are staying, in which part of the world, we are all the same, right? So we are a species, a species of dog, a species of cat, etc. So if we are talking about a particular habitat, okol je etai species thakibo, tenuka to noho yate to beleg species u thakibo, right? So all these groups of species, no, we have 3 groups. So groups of same species together would ultimately form another group that is called as genus. Similarly, many genus together, no, beleg genus together will form a family. Many families together, a order. Many orders together, a class. So this is the thing that we are talking about. So as we go higher up, so obviously the number of organisms will keep on increasing. Yes or no? Yes. So yate okol ekita asile episode ki hoise increasing. But the point is, what about the common characters? Means what is the character that they would be sharing? Again, talking from this point of view, if you are talking about this as a habitat, yate jodi okol eta species thake no, etu logot etu relation thakibo, etu logot etu relation thakibo. So as far as relation is concerned, they will have maximum common relation. Yes or no? Is the point understood? Kintu yate jodi aru eta species of kotha kau no, eta ihotor majot They will not have something very common. Right? Again, if you are talking about another species, they will have nothing in common, they will also have nothing in common. So the more higher we go up, the common characters will keep on decreasing, but the number of organisms will keep on increasing. Just take time and see whether you have understood or not. It is about question I. Because when you are fewer in number or in a particular habitat, eta species ase, so jehetu species buliye koise, so obviously they will be sharing certain characteristics amongst themselves, so common. এইটো বস্তুকে খায়, এইটো নাখায়, ইয়ালৈ যায়, ইমানখিনি টেম্পাৰেচাৰ সহিব পাৰে, ইমানখিনি নোৱাৰে. So they have so many things in common, but comparing 2 species, 3 species together, they will not have many characteristics to be said to be as common. So higher the taxonomical categories, number of organisms will keep on increasing, but the number of common characters will keep on decreasing. Clear no? So yare question ahe je sobotse least common character kot thakibo? Kingdom of, right? So next question ahe je since as I said no, remembering the sequence is important. Ako yate problem nai, yate problem nai, 18 ta di dibo, and then you have to say that sobotse common characters kot thakibo. So answer ketia koriba jeta sequence to janiba, right? So else you'll get confused je family thakibo na order thakibo. So it's very important to remember the sequence, and if you remember the sequence kudai gita question koribo pariba, right? Next, again before going to the other part of the lesson, aru kisman important points likhibo lagibo. ICBN, I think you remember. Okay, now talking about the different categories, what is important obviously is the 7 obligate categories, intermediate categories bilakor iman questions aha nai, right? Now how to recognize the obligate category by just looking at the name. Suppose we get a name, je eta naam khunilo, something called as right, Plan Kingdom, we come across a word that is, suppose we come across a word that is called as Bresi, right? Now looking at this name, what you have to first identify is the suffix that is given, and accordingly you will understand that what exactly we are talking about. Kuntu groupor kotha koi aso, right? If you see, yate suffix ki ase? AC, so AC belongs to ki? Family, so what is Bresi AC? Nothing but a family of the Plan Kingdom. Is the point clear? Take teneke, if I write another example, দিয়া নাই নেকি right, ঠিক তেনেকে else দিলে it will be order, sorry it will be class. Problem to কি হৈছে মোৰ ইয়াতে ফাইসি আৰু অপসিডৰ এক সেকেন্ড কিছুমান বুকছত মানে according to the new different types of classification তাতে suffix খিনি change কৰি দিয়ে sorry ইয়াতে মই অৰ্ডাৰ লিখাই নাই sub order ahi gol, order nai. So it is else. So mangi for else. Ako thik teneke ALS ase. So ALS talks about ki order. So out of all the suffix, maximum question has been asked about the order and the family. Baki iman aha nai, right? ঠিক তেনেকে আৰু এটা যদি কওঁ solan AC, আকৌ লাষ্টত কি থাকিব AC, তো solan AC কি হ'ব? It's nothing but the family itself, right? Genus, species, no definite suffix. Kingdom or eko definite suffix nai. Division, obviously it's something that's used in case of plants. We'll be having certain words called as spermophyta. Pisat porim ami jeta plant kingdom porim. Phyta boli kole we understand that we are talking about the division, right? Ever a question ahisile regarding this one, a intermediate category called tribe. Generally intermediate categories are eko question ahana except tribe, right? So it belongs to this and this. And similarly in the animal kingdom, obviously different suffix would be present. Since we are talking about botany point of view, we'll be remembering these. What is important? Obligate characters, and especially what is important is order and family. Hold no, I do. Next we'll go to the fourth point. These are certain names of families, obviously plant kingdom or families kisuman. Ekini information ketia laibo when we will be studying about morphology, right? So morphology will be talking about certain families, and at that time we will be using the names. Keteba question I have, what was the old name or what is the new name for this, right? So new name, if you see, suffix to, right, AC thakibo. Okay. Talking about Pami or Ericasi, Erica nut to Hunisuno, Tamul, right? So all those coconut, betel nut falls under this. Talking about Graminy, it's also called as Poaceae, rice, wheat, etc. belongs to Poaceae. Leguminosae or Fabaceae, pea, bean, etc. right? All the legumes. Next is Compositae or Asteraceae, the sunflower family. One of the most important family in angiosperms because it is considered as the most advanced family of angiosperms. Right. Next we have Cruciferae. Cruciferae is also called as Brassicaceae or the mustard family. Right. Next is Kihokane Cruciferae koi, so morphology pohimami, mustard family. Umbelliferae or it is called as Apiaceae. Example could be coriander. Right. Now it's okay, the last one, Labiatae or Lamiaceae. The one of the example could be Leucas aspera. Leucas aspera ba durun ful dekhisu no, durun khak ba durun ful. We have a small plant like it's a herb and with white flowers, right? That is that belongs to this family, right? Why is it called as Labiatae? Why is this called as Umbelliferae? We will be talking about everything during morphology. Etia okman naam bilak for the first time okman tanzan lage, kintu morphology will come across all these words again, right? Huh? Examples were, everything would be important during morphology, right? Yate khali the question I have, what would be the new name and what is the old name, right? Examples here for question I. As it is, when you are doing the entire chapter, entire course, you are protect to example in use aniba, right? Etya nala ke likhi bole. I think it's over. Next point. Asteraceae, Compositae or Asteraceae. Asteraceae is called as the sunflower family, right? Okol sunflower e nohoy, marigold, serigold, jiman pur ami tenika dhoroner seasonal flowers dekha pao no, sonkas, marigold, cosmos, everything belongs to Asteraceae. Brassicaceae mustard family. So the term species was given by question ahe. The term taxon, as far as the second statement is concerned, heter upor question ahe, dates upor question ahe, right? Next, another question could be, what is a taxon? A taxon is nothing but a unit of classification. It comprises of what? It comprises of real organisms, right? A term called as polytypic, right? Not necessary that each and every genus would be polytypic, right? There might be certain genus that comprises of just one specific epithet, kintu kisumanot ki thake bahut thake ekelege na, many species belongs to a single genus, and then we use a word called as poly. Poly as a name suggests, poly mane ki many, so we understood, right? Now as far as writing a scientific name is concerned, we have talked about various rules and regulations regarding scientific name, right? But another point to be noticed over here is, if suppose you are writing the genus name again and again, so the way we can write is just give the initial and a dot. If you are writing it for the first time, you cannot be writing it like, right? Ekdom first example to P tigris likhibo nwara. Upor jodi ebar panthera likhisa, tar pisot tumi P, you can continue, but first time P likhibo nwara, right? Same goes for plant kingdom also. First time you have to write the name of the genus, and if it's a polytypic, initial is sufficient. Specific epithet. Specific epithet is nothing but the species name, right? It is also called as epithet, right? So what is the use for? Use of classification. Right? Basically classify ami kihor karone koru? Maybe because of these, right? To know the organism, to know the similarities, dissimilarities, to establish the evolution or study the phylogeny, etc., etc. Right? So what we are studying is nothing but taxonomic hierarchy. In taxonomical hierarchy, what do you see is collection of certain categories that are also called as rank or taxon or unit of classification. How many obligates? 7. and intermediate 21. Now the next part of the lesson you have to talk about in details about the 7 obligate characters, right. So, what is a species, but what is a genus? Hey, common ek line 2 line you have to know about it, right. So, heading koriba species. Ekini hol? Now, as I have already said, when we are writing a note, obviously we write many sentences together, but if you develop the habit of writing the short note, you will see that there is just a collection of few points, right. Similarly, now what we are going to study is some important points about species, genus, etc. But later on, all you have to remember is species or duta point. Genus or just etai points, there are many species together comprise of a group called as genus. Tatke besi to aru nukudhe. Thik teneke tar next group many genus comprise of a family. That is the only sentence that you will remember. And as far as species is concerned, species or duta sentence. Okay, tinta sentence. First, the term that was given by the name of the scientist lagibo. Next is Kisman characteristics thakile species hoy, and what is the characteristic specifically we are talking about is the most important characteristic being the ability to reproduce amongst themselves. Right? So, যদি দুটা অৰ্গেনিজমে তাহাঁতৰ মাজত ৰিপ্ৰডাকশ্যন কৰিব পাৰে তেতিয়াহে তাহাঁতক কি কৰিম আমি স্পিচিজত থম but obviously this has certain exceptions, right. I think in the first class we had spoken about mule কৈছিলো নেকি yeah. So normally কি হয় scientists what they thought is, so later on we will be studying something called as biological concept of species also, but as of now species fully kole a group that will interbreed amongst themselves. We assume that a dog and a cat will never reproduce amongst themselves. A horse and a donkey will never reproduce amongst themselves. But we know hobo pare artificial to sobe hobo pare, right. Naturally hobo noare, kintu artificially it could be done. Okay. Okay. Talking about a species, the words that I have marked down. Bakibur eku nalage. Species, naturally interbreeding organisms with similarities. What type of similarities? Morphological, anatomical, genetical, etc. Genetical boli keneke gom palu? Cytological. So we are talking from a cell point of view, right? Next, the word reproductively isolated. Next, genetically closed system. Reproductively isolated means what? They can reproduce only amongst the members of the same species. Isolated, right? Belegor logot eku kam nai. Okol nijor logote kam ase, right? They remain isolated from other groups of organisms, right? As far as reproduction is concerned. So we are using the word called as reproductively isolated. So question hai, a group of organisms that are reproductively isolated falls under which category? It falls under species. So this is a word that's very important, and since they are reproductively isolated, so obviously they are a genetically closed system. Why are we talking about this word? Because whenever we are talking about more organisms combining themselves, gene exchange hobo, no? Right? We have crossing overs, we have meiosis, etc., right? So it will bring about variations. Kintu eketa species as reproduce kore ekutu variations hai, slight variations thakibo, but obviously the entire species will not change. A human being reproducing with a human being obviously will produce a human being itself, but a donkey reproducing or mating with a horse, now horse and donkey, the species got changed, right? So ekita word important: reproductive isolated, genetically closed system, interbreeding organisms, right? As far as examples are concerned, examples dibo lagibo niki? When you are writing a note for your boards, maybe if what is a species boli question ahe, all this information to diye diba. Tapos yatkeo you can add যে the term species was given by. Aru ki add koribo pare kisuman examples. Pora Panthera tigris di diba, tigris is the name of a species, right? Any type of example you can give. Moi eta examples dim ne pariba hekini. Ar lage jeli likhi lo nise. Panthera tigris tinta the most commonly spoken about are Panthera leo, Panthera tigris ji likha. Aru okay, ketaman scientific names jihetu janibo lagibo. Since it's a botany class, I am being a bit biased. Moi eku animal niliko. Lines of liking. And you can add your any animal example you want. Example of genus, example of species, junkita example NCERT bookot ase. Eta proper formatot moi di dim. As of now, just write the sentences. At a line, I think it's understood what is a genus, what is a family. Another point, if the question is asked about common or similarities, right, but common characters, so family would have less common characters as compared to genus, yes or no? right? The more higher we go, the common characters keeps on decreasing, right? So genus or ki hobo as compared to species, it will have less common. Family as compared with genus, it will have less common. Is the point clear? Family, another point important. So why you are putting certain organisms into one group called as families. So to put organisms into groups, you should be studying about their characteristics also. Innate to eta group or didile nohobo no. If you are talking about organisms belonging to a species, what is the most important character that you look for, whether they can interbreed amongst themselves or not, right? So if you want to put certain groups under one family, so what are the characters you will be studying? Vegetative characters and also reproductive characters, right? So this word is important. Based on this, a question ahisile. Okay, choose the incorrect statement from the following ahise. Board kita ase kiba kibi. Eta question, eta option ase. Families are characterized on the basis of merely reproductive features of plant species. Correct? Ne false? Choose the incorrect statement. Baki tinta statement correct hoy. Incorrect etwe ase. What is the incorrect thing that we are talking about? Yat ki likhi jasan. Families are characterized on the basis of merely reproductive structures of plant species. It is not only merely reproductive structures, but we have to talk about this word called as both. Right? All reproductive characters consider kore na duita kore. Duita kore. So hey tenuka dhoroner questions bur aise. So it's important that you read the statement properly. Right? So question to likhi di diu aru since we have discussed. Examples bilak pisot dim. I think these are understood. So baki kita to one statement, family rate point important. The NCERT book khon jodi anisa, just open this part, species genus jot likha ase eto open korason, ekhon chart thakibo lage. Notun konot ase nai najanu. A chart talking about different organisms, their class, family, etc. No, not that one. Yeah, that one. Table kiman?
1.1.
1.1. So you have to read that table, right? Since it's already given in your NCERT book, moi eta likhi pelai aru samoy to waste nokoru, let's not copy it down, right? What you can do, if you want to write it down in your notes, you can write it down, or you can study from there itself. Maximum question has been asked from that part, right? So question to keneke ahe je at a specific organism or class ki ba family ki, it belongs to which family, it belongs to which class, no? Out of all the examples that are given, the commonly asked is housefly. So housefly to mark koriba. Housefly kuntu question ahise, housefly family report question ahise. Next, mango. Housefly family and order, he dutar report question ahise. Mango ro family and order. Anacardiaceae or Sapindales. That does not mean rest of the columns will not study. Baki kita porhiboi lagibo, right? So question ahibo, the housefly belongs to which order, or it belongs to which family. Thik teneke wheat belongs to which order, which family, which kingdom, etc., etc. So the chart is very important, and commonly asked kita mark korillo housefly or mango basically ahise, right? Next is, we'll just write in a sequence all the examples that are given in your NCERT book. Species or examples, family or examples, kisman examples ase. If you just look into it, genus or tolot ba family tolot example boli likha ase. Instead of giving it separately, moi at one go di asu. Right? A group of species comprise of a genus. A group of species comprise of a genus. Here we are giving two examples of a genus, one from the plant kingdom, the other from the animal kingdom, right? higher to genus ki ase family, right? And how do you know that we are writing about a family? We have the suffix, that is AC, right? Example kita buji paisun nai, sequence to buji paisan nai. NCERT bookot keneke diya ase against each heading examples diya ase. Jodi NCERT kon ase just open and see. Just open the genus portion. Genus er tolot ki example diya ase swa. Family tolot ki example diya ase. Family tolot ki dise example. Petunia, Datura, Atropa diya ase niki? Ne omit kori legi ni. Oh, Solanum, Petunia, Datura, Atropa, right? Hegitai ase. So yate ki korisu khali moi sequence ot disu. Tate ki hoise against each heading ase, right? So a group of species will belong to a genus. A group of genus will belong to a family, right? So eta family ki thakibo collection of genus, right? Polynomials diya ase na? Spelling ki diya ase NOMIALS. Tat ki diya ase spelling to? Just a second. LES, yeah. ALES. Okay, likhe so. Oh. Aru baki to eko change nai? It is not polynomial. Polynomial ho gele to maths ho jabo. So generally from MCQ point of view, iman besi specific examples of question aha nai, right? So iman je prottekto bostu mukhosto koribo lagibo not necessary. You'll have an idea once you start doing the MCQs, right? Kitabur saba kenuka dhoroner questions ahise, right? That does not mean pura ignore kori diba. Kisman important pariba commonly asked kini ami mark korim, right? And as it is, once you keep on studying biology, this is the first class, no? Animal kingdom arambo korise neki tumalkor? Ki arambo korise yate? Animal kingdom. No, so by the time you read animal kingdom, you don't have to by heart, right? Similarly, once you study about plant kingdom, you'll know about it, right? Now since we have not done, it might look a little bit tougher, doesn't matter. Hekarne moi eku eta point tick kora nai, dekhisa nai. Baki kini points kini moi tick kori disu, right? So this was all about the categories that we find in something called as taxonomical hierarchy, right? If this is over, the next eta bostu concept poribo lagibo, likha biological concept of species. So we have something called as a biological concept of species. What exactly is this? This is nothing but a definition, a proper way how will you define a species, right? Species to define koribole eta proper definition lagibo, and scientists from time to time they have tried to define it differently. So one scientist called as Ernest Mayr, he has given a definition, and that is what we are going to learn. So biological concept of species mane biologically eta species of ba organisms khini kunkhini organisms of ami biological species বুলি কম. Whenever we are using the word biological, again the most important word is obviously reproductive isolation, right? Species hobo lagile group form koribo lagibo, organisms kini hey group to belong koribo lagibo. Tar sobotse important characteristic ki hobo? According to him also, it is reproductive isolation that forms the basis to form a group called a species, right? So tenuka koi eku beshi heku nai. Question ahe, who has given the concept of biological, who has given biological concept of species, the idea. So name of the science is important. So biological concept of species is a concept that defines species, right? The scientist tried to explain that how the group called as species is formed. He said that species hobo lagile eta groupot eniko members thakibo lagibo junbilak niki biologically or reproductively isolated. So a species is a group of organisms that are reproductive isolated. So the entire concept revolves around the very important word reproductive isolation. In other way around, what did he say is jedi reproductive isolated hoy tetiahe species to belong koribo, means the member of a species cannot mix with other species. No, here likha ase a biological species is a group of individuals that could breed amongst themselves but cannot breed with other groups. So Ernest Mayer'or mote eta species of jiman bilak organisms thakibo gute organisms bilake khali tahator majote mating koribo, belegor logot jodi mating kore they are not capable of staying in a species, right? But we know that this concept has certain limitations, right? Kintu limitations boli kiyo koisu er mote definition to ki koy je if they mate among themselves tetiahe species, right? But what about those examples like mule, we have talked about tiger, liger, etc., right? So etu eta concept disil thik asile, but this is not fully accepted because we have certain limitations. Is the point clear? Right? So yate ekhin loke question kiya hai, what is the key word of biological concept? This word is very important. Second point, definition to obviously MCQ point of view par nahe, so it is important and this important, and obviously a term called as speciation. It talks about what? It talks about a process called as speciation. What is speciation? Formation of a species, right? A species ki hoy nothing but a group, right? Next likha limitations of biological concept of species. Limitations likhi jano, limitations oblique exceptions boli likhibo pora. Or limitations of biological. Limitations mane ki drawback, right? Why is it not accepted? So this is all about biological concept of species. What is biological concept of species? Nothing but a definition. According to it, it talks about what, how the group species is formed. We have a word called as speciation, right? According to this concept, what did Ernest Mayr say? He said that organisms that could interbreed amongst themselves and cannot breed with some other members of other species only could be capable of belonging to a species, right? Belegor logot jodi reproduce kore tetia hale nahate species form nokore, right? But this concept obviously has certain limitations or exceptions, and it is not considered as proper because we have seen members of different species also mating amongst themselves either naturally or artificially, right? So when we talk about two different species mating together, generally the offspring is generally a sterile offspring, right? Naturally jeti eta horse or donkey mate korise tanto species to change hoy goise, right? As species to change hoy goise, and what we have seen that maximum belongs to sterile, and if they are sterile tetia hale ki hobo, next generation to do hoar kothai nai no. So the cross is over, right? Do we understand the word called as hybrid? A cross between two different species is called as a hybrid, right? Next, sterile hybrids thik ase, kintu nowadays what we have seen fertile hybrids also. Not necessary je duta beleg species have mate korile hodai je offspring to sterile hobo tenuka to nohoy, fertile hobo pare. Now we have taken these two examples, a tiger mating with a lion or a lion mating with a tiger. Now whenever we are talking about this example, obviously natural condition of eta tiger or lion mate koribo niki, জংঘলত বলে এটা টাইগাৰ আৰু লায়নে মেট কৰি আছে হ'ব নেকি? নহয়. So obviously it's understood that this is we are doing it artificially কৰিছো, কিন্তু artificially কৰো বা naturally কৰো, produce কি কৰিছে? Offspring এ produce কৰিছে, দুটা বেলেগ species এ মেটে কৰিছে. They did not say যে natural নে artificial, right? So natural generally আমি কি দেখিছো sterile, কিন্তু artificially আমি fertile offsprings produce কৰিব পাৰিম, right? I think that's all for today, right? No, these are recent studies that has come up, right? Thank you. Yeah. Oh, gender, based on that naam bilak, right? And you know that male, so no more words are, thank you.